In this episode, Golden and I discuss the chilling adventures of Sabrina, Season 1. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam number 53. I'm your host, Oren Merton, and this was supposed to be our Halloween episode. But life happens, and we didn't get it out in time. So here we are, about a week later, with The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Season 1. So for those of you who don't know, this is a Netflix television show, but the character of Sabrina originated in the pages of Archie comics years ago, and there has been a previous Sabrina series in the United States in the 90s. It was meh. So initially, when I heard that they were redoing Sabrina, I knew that it was a Greg Berlanti show. Greg Berlanti, the one who does the CW superhero shows and the DC Universe shows, and he did Dawson's Creek. So he's got a lot of the CW and Warner Brothers shows under his belt, and they all have a certain level of quality. So I was interested, but I wasn't that interested. But then it started getting really good reviews. And friends of mine started saying that they were really enjoying it a lot more than they thought they would. And finally, Golden watched the first one and said, okay, you've got to give this a try and see what you think. And I watched it and I was hooked. So it's a little confusing because Netflix only has one season, but they released it as part one in 2018, a Christmas special, and then part 2 came out this year. But it's all still season 1. So we talk about the entire season, and there are spoilers. So if you're interested in this show, I think we keep the spoilers sort of minimal, but they're there. So if spoilers are a thing, please watch the series, then come back and enjoy the discussion. If you don't mind some spoilers, let's go. I am here with Golden to talk about a Netflix series that's been around for a little while, but we just finished it now, or finished season 1 of it, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
So I'd finished something else in my, after work one day, and after work normally I put something on and I watch something while I'm doing things at work. And it's like, oh, well, I'll try Sabrina out and see. I had heard that it was good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came home that day and was like, well, is this something that you're interested in seeing? If not, I'm going to keep going with it. You're like, oh, yeah, well, let's try it. And we were hooked.
Oh, yeah. It's a great show. And all I had heard about it before, I'd had a couple friends that I'd read their social media posts saying, oh, this is really good. We didn't really expect much of it, but it turned out to be really engaging. And then I'd read this article that I guess the American Church of Satan was suing the production team for using some art that was theirs.
And I had remembered something about that as well.
Yeah. So I remember just sort of thinking, well, that's kind of foolish. And not really giving it much thought when it first aired at the end of 2018. But hearing it was good and being curious, and boy, was it worth it. It was absolutely worth it. I think that they managed to capture sort of the insecurity and doubt and anxiousness, etc., of just growing up and being a teenager and trying to navigate teenage years to adulthood with all of this, magic and great mysticism and witchcraft, and is witchcraft evil by nature, and does it have to be, and do we have to be, and can we help people, and what will people think of us if we help them? There was a lot of things that to chew on in this series.
Yes, and this is the premise from Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
Sabrina Spellman must reconcile her dual nature as a half witch, half mortal, while fighting the evil forces that threaten her, her family, and the daylight world humans inhabit.
That's a pretty good summary.
It really is. And it really is, once again, going back to, what happens if you are a mixed race.
Right.
In this case, half human, half witch.
And there is some racism and stuff that is dealt with as well. So, yeah, a lot of credit on this show needs to go to the acting. Again, the acting is absolutely excellent across the board. I think that, like other TV shows that we enjoy, the characters are really well drawn out. They're complete characters. No one acts out of character. One of my pet peeves when I've talked about the superhero shows is when a character acts out of character just to move the plot. Like, really? You couldn't think of another way to do that? But no one here acts out of character. Even if they do things that we think are kind of silly, if we're talking about teenagers who don't have a lot of experience, they probably would do some stupid things because we all did when we were teenagers. And that's just what it is.
And it's right down the street from Riverdale.
Right.
Which I guess it was supposed to be a companion to Riverdale, but this went to Netflix instead.
Mm-hmm.
So I am curious if they ever are going to do some sort of crossover between the two, since Riverdale is kind of going kind of spooky. Riverdale, Archie Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Archie Comics, if you go back and you listen to the old radio shows with Archie and Jughead in them, it is just goofy fun.
Right.
And when Riverdale originally came out, everyone that I talked to was like, okay, that's interesting. And then it was like, wow, this is dark. And I can't stop watching. And after first season, we were like, okay, where are they going to go? And then you've heard this. Riverdale's mentioned a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
It's dropped in this. So it'll be interesting if it ever does cross over.
Yeah. For those who don't know, the character of Sabrina Spellman, in fact, originated in the Archie comics.
Yeah.
I think in the 60s or something. She's been around a long time. And her family and everything was created in the pages of the comics, etc. So
I'm guessing that this Sabrina is also a little darker than that one was.
Oh yeah, Sabrina in the comic series was just as bubbly and just sort of 1950s pure.
And she still captures a little bit of that.
Yeah.
That absolutely. Is still there. But I think that the cast is put together so well.
Mm-hmm.
The lady that plays Hilda Spellman, Lucy Davis, and Zelda Spellman, Miranda Otto,
mm-hmm.
are just perfect in the roles.
They are. They're absolutely perfect. And the characters are so well crafted. The character of Zelda, when you first meet her, you think that she's basically this full-on sort of evangelical, strict hardliner, and that is part of her, and that is real. But at the same time, so is love of family is paramount to her. And so she has this niece who is this full-on rebel who is bucking the very church that she espouses, but she's not going to allow anyone to harm her niece because that's what's important in her life.
And then you have Hilda, who's just, I think, underestimated most of the time.
She seems like she's just this, as she put it once, ever the bridesmaid, never the bride. She seems like this sort of second in command, just sort of, very deferential character, but she is powerful.
And then you have on the not good side and what constantly against them, the Father Faustus Blackwood character who runs the school, played by Richard Coyle, which I became a really big fan of Richard Coyle in the Terry Pratchett, like they call it a mini series, Going Postal, as he's just really incredible. And so I've really appreciated and enjoyed his performance in this as well. I'm like looking over the cast list right now. And
they were all so excellent. I'd never seen the actress who plays Sabrina before, but she was just perfect for this role. I mean, she absolutely inhabited this role. And every character gets to show a range of emotions. They're not just sort of, I am the mustache twirling evil bad guy. Everybody gets to show their range, and they do it brilliantly.
I'm like looking over the list
Mhm.
of the actors and actresses, and Alexis Denisof, who
Right.
was on Angel and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm looking at his character, and his character's last name. His character is Adam Marsters. Now, I could be wrong, but I believe there was a Marsters.
Yes, in Angel.
Yes, who played
Buffy.
Spike.
Yes.
So I think that's really cute. I wonder if they just gave him that name just for the heck of it.
I'm sure they did, just to have some fun.
Or if it was always Marsters, But, I mean, we are both fans of Michelle Gomez from Doctor Who.
She is so good.
And she's listed as Mary Wardwell / Lilith / Madam Satan, or just Madam or Master.
But I'm
just kidding, yeah. Entertaining.
Yeah, no, she's great. Everybody, and all these characters have to play. I mean, even Sabrina, even though she is completely sincere, there are moments where they're playing, against type, basically, where they're doing things they wouldn't do or don't want to do, but they have to do, or they're doing to achieve some certain end. And so everyone has to be able to not just convince the other people in the story, but convince the audience as well. And I think they do a great job.
And they push boundaries.
Yeah.
For things that are uncomfortable for them sometimes.
Mhm.
You have a witch who's torn between the human world, half witch, who's torn between the human world and the witch world. And This is what you have to do in order to participate in the witch world. And just having a hard time coming to grips with that.
Right. If there's anything, talk about minor nitpicks. If there's anything that I would say after a while got a little tiresome, at first, the fact that, they're the Church of Night, the witches and the warlocks are part of the Church of Night, they would turn around all the phrases that we use. So we'd say, something like holy moly. They would say unholy moly or whatever. And it got old after a while for me. It's a minor.
It did get old for me.
Yeah. It's a me thing. It's just after a while, it's like, we get it. Or, what the hell? They'd say, what the heaven? And it's like, it was cute the first 5 million times. But after that, it's like,
I really think that the guy that plays her cousin, Ambrose Spellman, Chance Perdomo, was just very nuanced.
Yes.
His performance. He's such a kind of like laid back character. And it's just start peeling away.
Yeah.
Layers of onion, apparently, to really start to see who he's always been at his core throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
You have just like characters that are just kind of throw in, like Dorian Gray.
Right.
And it has been very interesting. It is a dark show, though.
Right.
It is definitely a dark show.
Right. Yeah. There's enough. In general, I'm always in favor of less episodes instead of more, because I think generally your network shows or whatever that have like 20 some shows, they tend to lose the plot after a while and there's a bunch of filler. But there's one season of Sabrina divided up into part 1 and part 2. Part 1 has 11 episodes. Part 2 has 9. And I have to say, I think season 1 really did a great job of keeping the story fresh and exciting and really engaging for all 20 episodes.
Yeah, and if you look on IMDb, the part 1 and part 2 are just listed as season 1 and season 2.
Yeah, they've Wikipedia mentions they did green light season 2, and it's gonna, I think, pop in
season 3, 4.
Well, depending how you look at it, I think they call it season 2, just parts 1 and 2. Or are they calling it 3 and 4?
I don't know. But I know that if you look on IMDb, it shows seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's seasons 3, 4, which are really going to be part 3, 4.
Part 3, 4 of season 2. Yeah. Well, they can call it anything they want, but
it just gets a little confusing.
Yeah, it does.
Keep messing up.
It does.
And I wonder if that's because it was starting on one platform and moved over to Netflix.
Never know. but it's definitely worth catching, and not just if you're a fan of witches and magic. I think just as a human drama, I think it's engaging.
Yeah,
So,
you have Sabrina's friends, which are very diverse. You have her boyfriend at the very beginning of the series who's having issues with a childhood trauma.
right,
You have another friend of hers that is dealing with knowing that there may be an illness or disability coming her way. You have another of her friends, which is coming to grips with who she's coming to grips with who she really is, and
gender wise,
yeah. But I don't think that she really understands that at the beginning of the season.
Sure.
And that realization's taking place. So you have everyone kind of really trying to figure out who they are. And that includes the weird sisters even.
Right.
Because they think that they've got it and that they know. And things keep happening that kind of make them question that.
Right.
There was something, I don't remember, I don't remember which book it was in. I don't know if it was your book or no, it was in the new R.A. Salvatore book. Is one of the characters talks about the fact that you have family and then you have people that become your family. And that he's discovered that the latter of those two is sometimes the more honest. And I thought that was really just very poignant. Right. And I think that is here too, because I think that in a way, her friends are her extended family.
Yeah.
And she will do whatever she needs to do for them.
Right.
Just like her family will do.
Right. And her birth family will as well. So, yeah. Right. If anything, I'd say that this series does show you that blood can be and, both family and found family can be incredibly vital to your growth and survival.
Everyone is important.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you just chase one over the other, you might find yourself missing out. Sometimes people are just looking for that blood relation, but they would be better off looking to the family in front of them, even if they're not necessarily family by birth or by blood. So there's a lot here to chew on, and it was done incredibly well. We haven't talked about the visual effects or anything, but they're very good. I think that visually, I think that this was filmed in a particularly kind of interesting horror movie kind of way, in that the edges and the background were very often out of focus.
Very often blurry.
Yeah. And
almost as if there's always a mist in the perimeter.
Yeah. And it's a really eerie effect, but it worked, especially because this is not, a rated R type of series. And
it guides your focus.
Yeah.
Because you don't really want to look at where it's blurry. Right. You want to look at where it's clear.
Exactly. So yeah, this is a visual feast as well as being just incredibly well acted and written and all of that stuff. So yeah, you were talking about the Riverdale show. The Warner Brothers basically hired Greg Berlanti for hundreds of millions of dollars to be like their TV Svengali. And pretty much every show he touches has just an incredibly high level of quality, whether we're talking about the CW superhero shows or Riverdale or Sabrina. All of his shows have a level of production and quality and, music, everything. It's always at a very high level. And this is absolutely no exception.
Do you remember how many episodes the first season was altogether? Part 1 and 2?
20, I think.
20?
And season 2 will be 16.
It's going to be shorter.
It's going to be shorter, yeah. I don't know if that's because it's too expensive or they just want them all to drop quicker or who knows what.
It's still going to be split into 2 parts.
Still going to be split into 2 parts. I'm going to guess 8 and 8. But yeah, that's Sabrina. If you have Netflix and you like this kind of show, then watch it. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, no, I think you'll be very entertained. And I loved her whole finding her own familiar and who her familiar is. And
yeah.
how the familiar plays its part.
Definitely. Every little thing comes into play in this series, and it's just done.
And something
really
from the
well.
very first few episodes comes back into play.
Absolutely.
They don't forget.
Yes. Yeah. Good writing. This is a very well written series. I read that it did quite well for Netflix as far as, streamings and stuff like that. So, it was definitely worth it. It was a series that sort of was never really high on my radar, which is why it took us, 8-9 months or whatever to start it from when it dropped. But it's definitely worth catching. Absolutely.
Apparently, most of the filming took place in Vancouver, British Columbia.
I believe all of Berlanti's shows, with no exceptions, take place in Vancouver. I think they may all center in the same studio or area, whatever. So yeah, that's a Berlanti thing. If it's a Berlanti show, it's in, that compound or whatever they have in Vancouver. And probably also keeps pricing down, which is, important with these expensive shows. Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/53. If you like this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen to podcasts, because reviews help other people who like this kind of thing find our podcast. If you have any comments, suggestions, or the like, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.